A wealthy man, Mr. Johnson, had a precious vase that he valued more than all other belongings. One day, the vase disappeared. The man was miserable. An hour after he discovered it was missing, he got a message. "If you don't come here in 10 minutes with $100,000, your vase will be broken." There was a photo attached to the message. Mr. Johnson realized it was some hotel. In that area, there were 3 of them: the Hero of California, Hummingbird, and Youth Hostel. Where should the man go? Mr. Johnson should hurry to Hummingbird. It's the only hotel that has the 7th floor. Amanda was in the middle of a burning room. The only window was small and too high for the woman to reach. There was also nothing to climb or stand on. There was no rope, neither was there a door. And still, in a matter of seconds, Amanda was outside. How is it possible? There was no door in the room. The woman just ran out through the doorway. A woman is sitting in her cabin in Ohio, but 4 hours later, she gets out of her cabin in Arizona. How did she do it? The woman is a pilot, and the cabin is actually the cockpit of the plane she flies. One night, Kevin broke into a rich house. He knew its owner had just bought a unique diamond. The thief managed to get through one of the trickiest security systems he'd ever seen. And here it was, the diamond. After grabbing the gem, Kevin got out of the house, but when he was already outside the gate, 2 security guards caught him. The guy tried to persuade the men he was only a passerby, but they didn't believe him. They searched Kevin, but found nothing. The guards were puzzled and decided the thief had swallowed the diamond. But X-ray also didn't show anything strange. The security guards had to let Kevin go. The guy got home, and in a few minutes, he had the diamond in his hands. How did he smuggle it? When Kevin broke into the house, he wasn't alone. His parrot was with him. After getting the precious stone, the guy attached it to the parrot's foot, and the bird brought the diamond back home. Paul was a young but very talented chemist. He was going to attend a very important conference where he had to present his latest work. But right before the event, Paul's envious colleague locked the guy in his lab. There was no way he could get out of there on his own. In the middle of the room, there was a test tube with some bright purple liquid inside. There was also a note. "This mixture will blow up in 1 minute. You've got only one chance to neutralize it with one of these ingredients. If you add the correct one, the reaction will stop. Here's the clue you'll need to figure out the needed ingredient. HIJKLMNO. And don't hope your chemical knowledge will help here. Luckily, Paul was very smart and managed to find the right ingredient before the time ran out. Which one was it? It's a row of letters from H to O. It means the needed ingredient is H2O, which is water. 2 identical vans were crossing the bridge when it collapsed. The car fell into the water and started to sink. Luckily, the drivers were unharmed. But they had to find the way to the surface really fast because the vans started to fill with water. One of the men began to push the driver's door, and the other was trying to open the side door. Who has the higher chances of survival? The first driver won't be able to open the door because of the water pressure. But the side door in the second car is a sliding one. With some effort, the second driver will be able to open it and escape. One person can dig a hole within 1 day. Then, how long will it take 2 people to dig half a hole? There's no such thing as half a hole. Look at these pictures and try to figure out which mirror is magical. It's the one on the right. It shows the man wearing a mustache, but in real life, his face is clean-shaven. Betty was having lunch in her favorite cafe when several police officers came in. They were looking for a criminal who had escaped from the police station the day before. Betty started to look around, examining the visitors. She spotted the criminal even faster than the officers did. Who was it? Look at the barman. He's wearing handcuffs. Daniel wanted to go to the seaside with his friends in the summer, but his father reminded the guy he'd promised to help in his parents' store. When the man saw how upset his son was, he offered him a deal. Daniel had to solve several riddles, and then he'd be free to go and have fun with his friends. So, our customers often ask us to sell them something that's full of holes but can still hold water. What should we offer them? After a while, Daniel found the right answer. What's this mysterious thing? It's a sponge. Daniel's father continued, I'm thinking of introducing a new method of pricing the things we sell. Socks will cost $20. A tie will be $12. You'll have to pay $28 for a sweater. And a coat will cost $16. Based on this pricing method, how much will be a t-shirt? Do you know the answer? Daniel was confused at first, but then he realized the correct answer was $24. His father was going to charge $4 for each letter needed to spell the item of clothing. You're doing really well, Daniel's father told the guy. That's why I'll give you just one more riddle. If you crack it, you can have some rest in the summer. 81 times 9 equals 801. This equation isn't correct. What can you do to make it true? This riddle took Daniel quite a while. And how fast can you solve it? All Daniel had to do was turn the equation upside down. Luckily, the guy managed to figure it out. He got 108 equals 6 times 18. Jason was a courier who regularly delivered food and other stuff to Mrs. Brown. The elderly lady really liked him a lot. She trusted him enough to let the guy use her spare key. The lady kept it under her doormat. When Mrs. Brown was away, Jason would take this key and leave everything he brought inside. One day, the guy came to the woman's house and found out the key wasn't in its usual place. He rang the bell, and a man he'd never seen before opened the door. I'm an electrician, he said. I was fixing some lighting problems in the living room, and the elderly lady is resting now. Jason immediately called the police. Why? The criminal entered the house with the help of the spare key. Paul came back from his lunch break and saw that someone had spilled coffee all over his documents. He cried out, and this attracted his boss's attention. The man decided to figure out who had spoiled Paul's work. He asked his subordinates what they had been doing during their lunch break. Nancy and Liza said they had been together. They went to a cafe to get some coffee. Brian explained that he'd felt unwell. That's why he decided to take a walk in the park. And Sandra said that she'd been talking to her boyfriend on the phone. The boss immediately realized who was lying. Can you figure it out? It was Sandra. There's a sign on the wall that prohibits the employees to use their phones in the office. It means the girl couldn't be speaking with her boyfriend. A wealthy businessman disappeared right from his home one afternoon. His wife called the police. The detective arrived and questioned everyone who was in the house at that time. The cook said that she'd been preparing dinner and hadn't left the kitchen. The maid claimed she had been cleaning the dining room after the businessman and his wife had had lunch. And the wife said that after lunch, she'd been sunbathing and swimming in the pool. The detective immediately realized who was behind the man's disappearance. Do you know the answer? It was the wife. Look outside. It's late fall and there's no water in the swimming pool. Jeffrey was on a plane. ready to have his first parachute jump, when he started to panic. Without putting on his parachute, the guy jumped out of the plane, and still, he remained absolutely unharmed. How is it possible? The plane was still on the ground. There's a large apple tree growing on a cliff. If a powerful wind is blowing towards the land, where will the apples fall? In any case, they will fall down. Look at this picture. There's something wrong here. Can you figure out what it is? Most wristwatches are made with the crown on the right side. Detective Harris has come to investigate a new case. A car crashed into a restaurant window, smashing it. There are two suspects, Julie and Douglas, but each of them claims it's the other person who did it. Can you figure out who's lying? It's Julie. The tire tracks on the ground belong to her car. At 9 a.m., Ethan got a call from his friend, an owner of a large business. The man said that a very important document had disappeared from his office. It had been on his desk the evening before, but now it was nowhere to be found. Ethan immediately went there to question his friend's employees. Soon, he had three suspects. Walter said he had spent the previous evening at the movies. Joan had dinner with her friends, and Zachary visited an art gallery. It didn't take Ethan long to understand who was lying. Do you know it too? It was Walter. His ticket isn't torn. It means he didn't enter the movie theater. Look at these prehistoric people. Who is from the future? It's one of the guys carrying water. He's holding a flashlight. Cheryl was reading a book, but she was careless and accidentally tore out pages 7, 8, 100, 101, 333, and 334. How many pages will she have to fix? Just 4. 7 and 8, as well as 333 and 334, are different sides of one page. Olivia called the police. She told them someone had broken into her house, tied her up, and taken all her money and valuables. When the officers arrived, the entrance door was open, and Olivia was indeed tied to a chair. And still, the detectives didn't believe her story. Why? If the girl was tied, how did she manage to call the police? Gemma returned from Asia and brought a precious porcelain figurine. She organized a party and invited all her friends to tell them about her journey. They had a great time, but after her friends left, the woman realized the figurine had disappeared.
Oh no!
She called the police and showed them the photos she had taken at the party. One of the officers immediately realized who had stolen the figurine. Do you understand it too? It was Emma. She hid the figurine under her hat. Look at these 4 matchstick patterns. Which one is different from the rest? It's pattern number 3. In all others, you can find 2 rectangles, but this one forms just one. One scientist needed volunteers for his experiments, and 2 friends, William and Oliver, needed money. And since the scientists promised the experiments were going to be harmless, they agreed to participate. But in reality, the scientist planned to test the volunteers' reaction to different poisons. First, he trapped the guys in his lab. Then he separated them and locked them in different rooms. William and Oliver could only escape if they joined their efforts. Unfortunately, the scientist was extremely cautious. The guys didn't see each other. One of them could only use the bathroom only in the evening, and the other only in the morning. And still, in a couple of days, the guys managed to get away. How did they do it? They wrote messages to each other on the steamed-up mirror in the bathroom with their fingers. They could read the messages later by breathing on the mirror. I shave, cut, and wash several times a day, but I still have more hair than you can imagine. Who am I? I'm a barber. Adam was driving home late at night when he noticed he was about to run out of gas. He stopped at a gas station to fill his gas tank and buy some snacks. Inside, there was a cashier and one more customer dressed in black. When Adam came up to the employee to pay, she told him $5.05. Adam paid, went outside, and called the police to report an emergency. Why did he do it? The cash register showed 1835, but the cashier said 505, which looks like SOS. Look at these emojis. How sharp is your vision? Can you spot the girl? Right you are. Here she is, on the left. Can you find all 6 Ys in this picture? Here they are. Good job. You take it and throw away its outside. Then you cook the inside. Then you eat the outside and throw away the inside. What is it? You've just eaten corn on the cob. Marcus woke up in a dark basement with just one candle burning on the table. He saw 3 doors in one of the walls and 3 keys lying on the table. How many attempts did the guy need to figure out the key for each door? He needed 6 attempts at the most. 3 of them for the first key, 2 attempts for the second key and 2 remaining doors, and just 1 attempt for the last key. But if Marcus is extremely lucky, he might just need 3 attempts. Look at these words. One of them is odd. Can you figure out which one? First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7th, 8th, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It's the word fourth. It should be spelled as fourth. Look at this picture attentively. What's wrong with it? There are no shadows here. Larry's mother asked the guy to do some grocery shopping. She gave him a shopping list and her bank card. But the woman knew her son was very absent-minded. That's why she gave Larry a small note in case he forgot the card's PIN number. When the guy was at the register, he realized he had indeed forgotten the PIN. Larry pulled the note out of his pocket and immediately remembered the PIN. Can you figure out what it was if the note had a fly, a cat, a person, and a snake drawn on it? The PIN was 6420. Larry just had to count the number of legs of each creature. What is the missing number? It's 78. When read upside down, those numbers are 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, and 91. When someone robbed a bank in a small town on a snowy Monday, the police have 4 suspects. But all these people claim they've been at home all day long. Look at their homes and try to figure out who's lying. It's Rick. He returned home only recently. He parked his car near the house after the snow had already built up on his driveway. You need to move only 2 matchsticks to get 2 squares. How can you do it? That's how you can get 2 squares. Which of these clocks is the odd one out? It's clock C. On its face, 13 has taken the place of 12. Thomas loved asking his friends to solve all kinds of funny riddles. If they answered correctly, he helped them with whatever they had problems with. One day, Daniel came to Thomas and asked for help with his math exam. He knew the rules though. He had to solve one riddle first. "What kind of running leads to walking?" Thomas asked. Do you know the correct answer? Daniel said, "Running out of gas." And he was right. But helping your friend with exam preparation is a difficult task. That's why Thomas asked Daniel to solve one more riddle. A woman drove from Seattle to Los Angeles. It took her 2 days to get to her destination. That's when she discovered one of her tires was punctured. How did she manage to get to Los Angeles? Daniel cracked this riddle. Can you do the same? The punctured tire was the spare one. Detective Parkson was working on a tricky case. One day, he vanished. His colleagues found an encrypted note on his desk. The officers knew Parkson had 3 suspects: Milana, Susan, and Emily. Who had some information about the detective's disappearance? After some time, one of the police officers cracked the code. D plus 1 equals E. L plus 1 equals M, and so on. It was Emily who knew where the detective was. Aaron's enemies kept the guy in a tower that was 150 feet high. Aaron's friends managed to have a pair of scissors and a rope delivered to the man. Unfortunately, the rope was just 75 feet long. And still, Aaron managed to escape. It's known for sure that he cut the rope in the middle. But then what? The guy did cut the rope in the middle. Not across, but along. He tied the 2 parts of the rope together and got down to the ground. Mike pointed at a young woman in the street and said, "She's the daughter of my grandfather's only son." Is the woman related to Mike? She's his sister. Detective Jackson was walking along the street when he heard some noise. He ran to see what had happened. It turned out that some man had grabbed an elderly lady's bag and sprinted away. The detective ran in the direction witnesses showed him. After he turned the corner, he saw 3 doors. He knocked on the first one. The apartment owner, Patrick, opened the door. The man told the detective he'd just returned from a long run. Another man, Jerry, opened the door. He said he'd been playing basketball behind the house. The third apartment belonged to Raymond, a musician. He had just finished composing a new piece of music. After talking to all these people, Detective Jackson understood who the thief was. Do you know it too? The thief is Jerry. He claimed he'd been playing basketball. But he was holding a football while talking to the detective.
Detective James Anderson stopped the man who was leaving a clothing store. The sales assistant claims you've stolen some expensive gloves. "These are my gloves. I've had them for ages." But the detective immediately understood the man was lying. How? The man wouldn't be able to use these gloves. They are both for the same hand. A phone call woke Detective Anderson early in the morning. "My house has been burgled," Mr. Harrison shouted. When James arrived at the man's house, he heard the following story. "While I was away on business, my neighbor Adam was looking after my house." That's when Adam decided to chip in. "I heard some noise coming from Mr. Harrison's house yesterday. I came up to the window to check if everything was okay. It was very cold, and the window was completely frozen. I breathed on the glass to unfreeze it a bit and saw that everything inside was in a mess. I immediately called Mr. Harrison." "And now," Detective Anderson said, "tell us where the stuff you stole from your neighbor is." How did James understand Adam was guilty? Windows freeze from the inside, not outside. A rich man's wife disappeared from the hotel where she was staying. Detective Anderson had to inform and question her husband. He found the man on his own island. "I've been here for the last 2 months. I asked my family and staff not to come and distract me. I'm writing a book. And over the past several weeks, I've been working from early morning to late evening. I haven't even left this cabin." Anderson immediately understood the man was lying. How? There's only a thick notebook and a pen on the man's desk. If he had been writing as much as he claimed, the ink would have finished long ago. Mr. Dillon sold beautiful rare vases. There were dozens of them on the shelves of his store. One day, the man called the police. When they arrived, the owner had his head bandaged. His store was a mess. "These guys ran into my store and grabbed the money and the most expensive vases. Then they hit me on the head and I blacked out." Detective Anderson immediately understood that Mr. Dillon was lying to get the insurance money. How did they figure it out? Even though most of the vases are on the floor, they aren't even cracked. But if the vases had fallen down from the shelves during the robbery, they would have been shattered. Janet called the police. "I was crossing the road when a car almost ran me down. I fell down and hit my head." When the police officers arrived at the place of the accident, Janet showed them the car that, as she thought, had almost hit her. The driver arrived at that moment. He denied doing it. Detective Anderson asked Janet to calm down. It really wasn't the car they needed to look for. How did he understand it? It was raining when Janet was crossing the road, but there's a dry spot under the man's car. It means it had been standing there for a long time and couldn't have hit Janet. Look at these two bloggers. As you can see, they both seem to be very popular. They also have the same amount of likes. But there's something wrong with one of them. She must be hiding something. What is it? The girl on the right is probably trying to save money at the moment. The logo on her bag looks like the Chanel logo, but it's written Gucci underneath. Detective Anderson was on a train. He had very nice fellow travelers. They were talking and laughing when the train entered a tunnel. Everything was plunged into darkness for several minutes. When the train left the tunnel, one of the passengers, Ella, exclaimed, "My diamond brooch! It's gone!" Everyone started talking nervously, looking at one another. That's when Anderson calmly said, "I know who took the brooch. I saw it." How could he see it? One of the travelers had a watch with luminous hands, and when this guy moved his hand to take the brooch, James noticed it. It was a scorching hot day when Larry made a bet with his friends. The guy told them that water produced by different companies tastes different too. At that time, they were chilling in the garden of one of Larry's friends, drinking water and lemonade. "You can blindfold me. I'll take a sip from 2 bottles of water, the one we have on the table and the one you'll bring from the kitchen." I noticed it was another producer. "I bet I'll be able to tell the difference." Then he did exactly that. His friends were ready to give Larry the money he had won, but Detective Anderson, yep, he was there too, cut in. "You were cheating," he said. Why did he think so? It was an extremely hot day. No wonder the water that had been outside for several hours was much warmer than the water brought from the kitchen. Rachel called the police early in the morning. When they arrived, she told the officers her story. "I work in a museum. Yesterday I took home several ancient books. I wanted to do some research. But then a blackout happened. I lit a couple of candles and continued my work. Suddenly I heard the doorbell ring. When I opened the door, someone in a black mask hit me on the head. When I came to my senses, the books were gone." Detective Anderson arrested the woman for misreporting. Why? If there had been a blackout, the doorbell wouldn't have been working. Detective Anderson was walking along the river when he heard someone screaming. It was a young woman. She was drowning. James immediately left his shoes and backpack on the ground and dove into the water. Luckily, he was in time. When James was pulling the woman out of the river, he saw a passerby standing next to his stuff. Unfortunately, I can't swim, but I looked after your things," the man said. "Then why did you rummage in my backpack?" James asked. How did he understand someone had opened his backpack? When he dropped the bag on the ground, the zipper was on the left side, but now it's on the right. Detective Anderson found out a smuggler was going to leave the country through the largest airport in the city. He arrived there and detained 3 suspects. Look at them and try to figure out who the smuggler is. It's the 3rd passenger. His suitcase is full of totally random stuff. Women's shoes, some rugs, old dirty jeans, a wig. Plus, when closed, the suitcase looks much larger than when it's open. Detective Anderson's friend, Jose, hurt his knee while playing frisbee. The doctor let the guy stay at home, but by no means was he allowed to get up from his bed. Anderson was also there, and he promised the doctor to look after his friend. But at some point, he had to go away for several hours. He asked his sister Sarah to take care of Jose. When James returned, Sarah told him Jose had followed the instructions and had been sleeping for the whole day. But when Anderson entered his friend's room, he immediately realized the man had gotten up. How did he understand this? Jose moved his bedside lamp from the desk to his nightstand and plugged it in. Detective Anderson's sister, Sarah, was married to Michael, a professional cyclist. One Saturday morning, James came to visit them and noticed that everyone was extremely nervous. It turned out Michael was going to have a challenging cycling tournament. "I promise I'll bring you the bouquet they give to the winner," Michael told Sarah. 4 hours later, he indeed came back with beautiful flowers. But James realized right away Michael hadn't won the tournament. How? The flowers are actually from Sarah's garden. Detective Anderson was driving along a dangerous mountain road. Suddenly, he hit the brakes. He saw a man sitting on the side of the road crying. It turned out the man didn't manage to control his car. It fell off the road and the man got thrown out of the window. Right now, his very expensive vehicle was beyond repair. "Could you be my witness when I prepare the documents for my insurance company?" James agreed, but asked the man to show him what was inside the car. The man took the key out of his pocket and unlocked the damaged vehicle. "I won't take part in this fraud," Detective Anderson said. Why did he think the man was lying? If the man had been thrown out of the car, the key would still be in the ignition. Detective Anderson's friend Hannah called him and asked the man to visit her. She said it had to do with her husband, Martin. He told me he had to go on a business trip to the mountains. He didn't really want to go there because he hates cold weather. But he had to, so we packed tons of warm clothes and left. When Martin arrived there, he sent me a photo from his hotel room. I feel something's wrong with this picture, but what exactly? Anderson needed no more than a glance at the photo, and he realized Martin had indeed lied to his wife. How did he figure it out? There are palm trees outside the window. Those trees don't grow in cold climates. Oh boy, William got inside a cave during an archaeological expedition. There were 3 ways out, however, only one of them was safe. His map said that behind the first way out there was a pond that swallowed everything in. The second way out led to dangerous dinosaurs that would eat him alive. The third way out led to an erupting volcano. Which way was safe? The second one, because the dinosaurs went extinct many years ago. You're running away from a pack of zombies and come across 3 doors. Behind the first one, there's raging fire. Behind the second one, there's a lake of water. Behind the third one, there's a venomous snake. Which way would you choose? I'd recommend to choose the second one and swim away. It's just a lake. You can do it. During his vacation in the jungles, Aiden was caught by some tribe. They tied him up and said they'd push him into one of the 3 pits of his choice. The first pit was filled with zombies. The second one, there was raging fire. The third one was filled with huge pitcher plants. Which pit should Aiden pick? He should choose the third one. The pitcher plants only eat insects. They're not dangerous for people. Aston reported that someone had robbed his house. Detective Callum arrived and asked Aston to tell him what happened. He said that he walked into his room and saw someone getting out of his window. They must have heard him walking inside the house. Then he checked his desk and found that his money had been stolen. Detective Callum asked if Aston had touched anything else, and the man said he hadn't. Detective Callum closed the case and refused to proceed. Can you guess why? The robber wouldn't get out of the window without stepping on the bed. However, the bed was perfectly made, and Aston said he hadn't touched it. It means there was no robber. Waverly was an archaeologist looking for a pirate treasure. In one of the caves on a deserted island, she finally found it. There were 3 chests, and one of them was filled with gold and gems. However, if she picked one of the wrong chests, terrible things would happen to her. Luckily, there were statements on each of them, but only one of these statements was true. 1. The treasure is in this chest. 2. The treasure isn't in this chest. 3. The treasure isn't in chest number 1. Which of the chests has the treasure? Let's solve it step by step. If the first statement is true, then the treasure must be in the first chest, and the other statements must be false. In this case, the second statement is also correct, so that was a wrong guess. If the second statement is true, then the treasure isn't in the first chest. The treasure isn't in the second chest either, just like it says. Then it must be in the third one. However, this makes the third statement correct too, although it shouldn't be. If the third statement is true, then from the first statement that is wrong, you can conclude that there's no treasure in the first chest. Since the second one is wrong too, then the treasure must be there. Now there's no contradictions, and the treasure is in the second chest. Whew. Does anybody else have chest pains? Just me? Yeah, okay. Skylar and Amelia are pen pals. Skylar said that her birthday was in winter, and Amelia said that hers is in summer. However, a couple of months later, they both had their birthday on the same day. Still, none of them lied. How is it possible? They live in different hemispheres. When it's wintertime in the US, it's summer in Australia, and vice versa. Mrs. Fitz came back from work and found that her favorite cup was broken. She asked her daughters who had done it. Katie said, "It wasn't me." Serena said, "It wasn't me either." Hannah said, "It was Serena." Mrs. Fitz knew her daughters well, and she could tell what happened. Only one of the girls was telling the truth. Can you guess who broke the cup? If Katie tells the truth, then firstly, it wasn't her who broke the cup. Secondly, the other two girls are lying. Serena is lying, so you can conclude it was her. But then Hannah is right, and that's a contradiction. Let's say Hannah is right. Then it was Serena who broke the cup, and Serena is lying. But then Katie is telling the truth too when she says it wasn't her. So Serena is telling the truth. She says it wasn't her, so you can trust her. And Katie and Hannah are lying. Katie says it wasn't her, so it was her. And Hannah says it's Serena, which is a lie. So Serena is the honest girl, and Katie is the guilty one. Hannah is just a liar. Esme was on her casual walk in the forest, and she didn't get lost this time. Here it was, her way home. But the other one was away to the witch's house. After a bit of thinking, Esme decided she had to say hi to her old friends and visit the witch. The witch said she didn't have a riddle for her that day, and Esme was free to go. But Esme had one. She said if the witch got it wrong, Esme would take her cat. Dear witch, imagine you're in a dark room. How can you get out? She mustn't imagine that. Spoiler, the witch got it and kept the cat. Next time, Esme. A police officer was walking in a neighborhood and stopped one gentleman. He asked him what the man was doing, and he said that he had just left his house to go to the grocery store. However, the officer didn't believe him and arrested the man. Why? Look, it's snowing, and there are fresh footprints on the snow that lead out of the window. House owners usually use the front door to walk out of the house, so this one must be a burglar. Bryce was a grumpy old gentleman who didn't like some teenagers walking past his house. So once, he decided to report them so they'd never be allowed to get close to him anymore. He called the authorities and told them that he was having tea on his terrace, and those teenagers threw a baseball at him. Luckily, the baseball flew above him. However, the detective didn't believe it had happened at all. Why? Take a look at the terrace. It's all made of glass. Bryce's place is right next to a window. If the baseball had flown right above him, as he said, it would have broken the glass. Thomas was collecting action figures. Some of them he got from his grandfather. They were super rare, and his collection of more than 500 figures was worth about $1 million. One day he came home from vacation and found out that his collection was stolen. Detective Callum was up for the case. There were 3 suspects, all of them were Thomas's neighbors. He said that the collection of action figures had been stolen and asked what they had been doing during the holidays. Sydney said that she was in the neighborhood. She was working but had nothing to do with the figures. Mateo said that his grandma is staying with him, so he's always with her, and he couldn't find any room for 500 action figures at his place. Gideon said that he wasn't even in the neighborhood and had just come back himself. Who stole the collection? Mateo. No one mentioned how many figures there were in the collection, but he knew somehow. Samantha, a rich woman, found out that someone had stolen the money from her wallet. There were 3 people in the house: Malcolm, a cleaning man, Grace, a gardener, and Sebastian, a boy who walks her dog. She reported the case. The police took the fingerprints but only found those of Samantha herself. Still, they had the main suspect. Who was it? The main suspect was the cleaning man Malcolm. He's wearing gloves, and that's why he was able to do it without leaving any fingerprints. Annabelle didn't want to go to school, so in the morning, she went downstairs and told her mom that she wasn't feeling well. She said that she had eaten a bit of apple last night, and it must have been poisoned because she'd been feeling unwell all night. However, Mrs. Collins didn't believe her and sent Annabelle to school. Why? There's just one bite on the apple, and it's a fresh one. If Annabelle had left this bite last night, it'd be brown, but it was still okay, which meant it was fresh. At school, Sophie opened her locker and found an envelope. Inside, there was a calendar and a note asking if she wanted to go to the prom. However, instead of the name, there were just several numbers: 17, 2, 30, 25. Can you guess who asked Sophie to prom? The calendar is the key. You just have to find all the numbers and see what name the first letters of the respective months give you. So 17 is circled in August, so it's A. Number 2 is in December, which gives us D. Number 30 is in April, so A again. And finally, number 25 is May 25, so it's May. Seems like the guy's name is Adam. Too bad there are 13 Adams at her school. Elsie walked into a party store to buy something. She learned that 1 costs $1, 17 costs $2, and 103 costs $3. She needed 22. What do you think she's buying, and how much should she pay? She's probably buying birthday candles for a cake, so each candle costs $1. She needs 22, which is 2 candles, so she'll have to spend $2.
One night, a gang of thieves were stealing boxes with electronics from a warehouse. They were carrying them to their van when they heard a police car siren. And still, even though the thieves didn't manage to avoid the police, they didn't get arrested. Why? They started to carry the boxes back into the warehouse, pretending to be a late-night delivery. You need to take 2 apples from your garden and bring them to your friend, but she lives on the other bank of the river. To get to her house, you have to cross a bridge. It can hold your weight and the weight of 1 apple. If you try to step on the bridge with 2 apples, it'll collapse into the water, which is swarming with piranhas. What can you do to bring your friend 2 apples if you can only make 1 trip? You should cross the bridge while juggling the apples. When is 1,893 and 2,548 smaller than 498? When they are years BCE. Susan worked in a clothing store that sold expensive designer items. One day, she discovered that someone had stolen a pair of pants. Look at the people who were inside at that time. Try to figure out who the thief is. It's the guy on the right. If you look attentively at his legs, you'll see the pants peeping out from under his jeans. A mad researcher caught Eric. He told the man, "I'll let you go if you jump from a 30-foot tall ladder and remain unhurt." Eric thought a bit and did just that. How did he manage to avoid injuries? He jumped from the bottom stair. Detective Michael Brown went missing while investigating a tricky case. His friend, Detective Williams, found out that one of their colleagues was behind his disappearance. Williams visited Brown's home, and his friend's wife gave him a note. Michael told me to give it to you if something happened to him. In the note, there were 4 numbers, 2, 8, 6, 7. William started to question his colleagues. "I've been away visiting my parents," said Tess. Jack said, "I haven't seen Brown for a couple of days." And Nora replied, "I'm just a trainee. Detective Brown gave me a task and I was busy doing it." Williams thought for a while, looked at the note again, and understood who was guilty. It was Tess. 2867. The first letters of these numbers make up her name. When Ashley came home in the evening, she noticed that the living room window was broken. She got angry. Her husband must have practiced his favorite soccer moves inside again. But the man said, "I was sitting on the sofa watching a soccer match. Suddenly, a ball hit the window from the outside and broke the glass." He showed his wife the soccer ball he was talking about. But Ashley came to the window and immediately realized her husband was lying. How? The woman saw that the glass was on the ground outside the house. But if someone outside had kicked the ball and it had broken the glass, the shards would be inside the room. 3 tortoises are having a walk in the park. One of them says, "2 tortoises are following me." The second tortoise says, "1 tortoise is moving in front of me and 1 is behind me." And the third tortoise says, "2 tortoises are traveling in front of me and 1 is behind me." How is it possible? The tortoises are moving in a circle. Stephen had a storeroom in his house. It got locked with a special padlock which could be closed without a key, but to open it, Stephen had to use one. The only person who had the key was Stephen. There were no duplicates. The man locked the door carefully every evening. But one day, a golden brooch was found lying in the middle of his storeroom. It had been stolen from the museum the day before. The police suspected that Stephen was the thief because no one else had the key, and the man lived alone. Stephen knew for sure he was innocent, but then, how did the brooch appear in the room? While Stephen was in the storeroom, the real criminal changed the padlock. Stephen didn't need the key to lock it. That's why he didn't realize the padlock had been changed. Later, the thief opened the lock with his own key and left the brooch inside the room. Look at these 2 detectives standing on a wooden board. Which of them is smarter? The one on the left. He can keep his balance by standing in the middle of the wooden board. But the other detective can easily fall down. Once, a dance studio owner found Dylan, one of the instructors, lying on the floor in one of the rooms. Someone had hit the man on the head. The police questioned the dance studio workers and visitors and found 3 suspects. Chloe, a regular, said she hadn't visited the studio for several days. She had a couple days off and spent them sunbathing on the beach. Ethan, another instructor, told the police his friend had called him and asked for help. That's why he had left the studio before Dylan came to work. Layla, Dylan's girlfriend, told the police they had quarreled earlier in the morning, but after that, she didn't see Dylan. The police officers understood right away who was behind the attack. It was Chloe. She said she had spent several days on the beach, but her skin was extremely pale. There are 4 floors in a hotel. The higher the floor, the more people stay there. Which floor does the elevator visit most frequently? The first floor. People from all the floors go there. A billionaire's wife called the police at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. She said she found her husband unconscious in his study. A baseball bat was lying next to him on the floor. The police questioned everyone who lived in the house. The wife said she had been away, buying her husband a present for their 10th wedding anniversary. The driver said he had left the evening before. He went to his parents' house because they needed some help. And the cook said he'd been preparing breakfast since 6 a.m. and hadn't left the kitchen. Who's lying? The wife. Stores aren't likely to be open so early on Sunday morning. You've got 9 coins. One of them is fake, and it weighs a bit less than the others. You've also got a pair of scales, and you're about to do 2 weighings. How can you figure out which coin isn't real? The first weighing. 3 coins and 3 coins. If one of these piles weighs less, the fake coin is there. If they have the same weight, the fake coin is in the third pile. The second weighing, take 2 coins out of the pile with the smallest weight. The lighter one is fake. If their weight is equal, the fake coin is the third one. Kevin woke up in a hospital. He only remembered his name and nothing else. A doctor came in to check on the guy. He said 3 young women were waiting to see Kevin. The women came in. Strangely, each of them had claimed she was the guy's sister. Only one of them is telling the truth. Who is it? It's the one in the middle. She has a birthmark on her hand, and Kevin has the same. Brenda promised her friend Larry to write an essay for their Friday lecture, but she had one condition. I'll help you if you increase 86 by 12 without adding anything to this number. Larry was able to do it. How? He wrote 86 on a piece of paper, turned it upside down, and he got 98. You're at home when your friends suddenly drop by. In your fridge, you only have a bottle of soda, some orange juice, and a bottle of water. What will you open first? The door of your fridge. 5 cats need 5 minutes to catch 5 mice. How much time does 1 cat need to catch 1 mouse? The same time, 5 minutes. Amanda was going through a deserted park when someone hit her on the head. When she recovered, her bag, along with her phone, money, and documents were gone. There were no people around except for one elderly lady. Amanda rushed towards her, explained the situation, and asked to call the police. The lady told her not to worry and started to press 911 on her phone. After talking for a minute, she said, "They're going to be here in no time." As soon as Amanda heard these words, she sprinted off. Why? Amanda saw the lady's phone didn't have any signal. Then how could she call the police? A glass jar is standing on the table so that part of it is in the air. In half an hour, the jar will fall to the floor. Why? What's inside the jar? Inside the jar, there's some ice, but its weight is distributed in such a way that the jar is balanced. Once the ice melts and turns into water, the jar will fall.